Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is brought to you by Blackout Coffee Company, which will be assisting me today with the grumpy toddler that decided to wake up 2 hours earlier than usual. Whether you are a parent or someone who just loves good coffee and the Second Amendment, Blackout has you covered. They have coffee, tea, and hot chocolate, support channels like mine, and support some of your favorite gun rights groups like GOA and FPC. They are a great company of great people and their coffee is top notch. So to check them out and help support the channel, go to blackoutcoffee.com/libertydoll. Alright folks, I have an update for you today on one of the FFLs that was raided and shut down by the ATF last year. This is the case where the ATF showed up over a dozen deep to the home of a part-time kitchen table FFL and pointed their guns at his kid. You can find the full story in this video up here, but the short version to catch you up is this. In June 2023, Russell Fincher was working 3 jobs: high school history teacher, Baptist pastor, and part-time gun dealer. He mostly sold guns via his business, Triple G Firearms LLC, at gun shows and also coached Little League in Tuskahoma, Oklahoma. Until one day, the ATF got a bug up their ass and asked to do an inspection. They showed up at his house, prowled around for a few hours, took photos of all of his 4473s, which is common but illegal, and left. They told him he was in tip-top shape and everything was fine. And then 2 weeks later, they changed their minds, saying they had concerns about his penmanship. They said that they couldn't read his writing and found one instance where they found he had written a model number instead of a serial number. He was in the process of trying to correct this error. All seemed well and good again until June. He suddenly gets a call from the ATF asking if they can come to his home again. He and his son were getting ready to go to a gun show, but he says, "Sure, come by anytime." Apparently, this translated to rolling up with 7 cars and 15 ATF agents in full SWAT gear, waving their guns around, handcuffing him, pointing their guns at his kid, threatening him, and forcing him to sign a paper on the spot to give up his FFL. They even brought 3 copies because of that bad handwriting. They took his inventory, a bunch of his personal guns, and told him to warn all of his friends because the ATF was coming for them too. It was like a movie. Their reasoning? They told him because when he had sold a mere $75 of ammo at his last gun show, he was making too much money. So that brings you up to date with everything from the last video. Now, we still don't know why they singled him out and thought it appropriate to wave their guns in his kid's face. We still don't know how bad handwriting warrants shutting down a man's business and taking his stuff. The only real detail we have now is a list of all of the ATF agents present via some court documents. We know a judge signed off on a search warrant, that an agent Daryl Witham was assigned to knock and announce, which is not exactly what happened, and that a Ben Nechaparenko carried a battering ram to a guy's house who said, "Sure, come anytime." We also now have a list of everything taken, including his phone, laptop, and home computer. Fast forward to last November. A grand jury issued a 3-count indictment charging him with 2 felonies and 1 misdemeanor. The original indictment has been sealed, so we only have this updated redacted version. Count 1, engaging in the business of dealing firearms without a license, a felony. Count 2, selling ammunition to a prohibited person, also a felony. And count 3, making false entry in records by a federal firearms dealer, a misdemeanor. The indictment doesn't explain much. He was an FFL, but count 1 says he was engaged in the business without a license. Count 2 says he sold 60 rounds of ammo to an informant and had, quote, reasonable cause to believe the informant had been convicted of a crime punishable by more than a year in jail. We don't know how he was supposed to know this, as Oklahoma doesn't require background checks for ammo sales. And count 3 says he, as an FFL, falsified records on some PSA receivers, writing up that they had been transferred to someone labeled TF when they weren't. He was arrested, booked, and released, and given $10,000 bond. Unfortunately, homeboy had a public defender, and this public defender negotiated a plea agreement. Under the agreement, he would plead guilty to 2 counts of selling to a prohibited person, punishable by up to 15 years in prison and a $250,000 fine, in exchange for dropping the other 2 charges. Under the plea deal, instead of any prison time, he'd be given 3 years of probation and couldn't contest the forfeiture of 39 of his guns. It also would require him to confess to selling firearms without an FFL, even though he had an FFL during the dates of the alleged crimes. I don't understand how this works. This part of the plea agreement basically reads like a copy of the new ATF rule that is currently on hold. Beginning on or about February 2nd, 2021, and continuing until on or about June 16th, 2023, within the Eastern District of Oklahoma, I, Russell Richard Fincher, not being a licensed dealer of firearms within the meaning of Chapter 44, Title 18, United States Code and Federal Law, did willfully engage in the business of dealing in firearms at wholesale and retail. During this time, I devoted time, attention, and labor to dealing in firearms as a regular course of trade and business with the principal objective of livelihood and profit through the repetitive purchase and resale of firearms. During this time, I also devoted time, attention, and labor to dealing in firearms as a regular course of trade and business to predominantly earn a profit through the repetitive purchase and resale of firearms. Finally, during this time period, the firearms I sold were not for the enhancement of a personal collection or for a hobby, and were not part of my personal collection of firearms, and I did this with the knowledge that my conduct was unlawful. It would also require him to admit to selling ammo to a prohibited person. Obviously. As for the falsified records, it's as if they don't even exist, even though the plea deal starts with a statement that the government could prove his guilt for everything without a reasonable doubt. And we still don't know what any of the evidence is. Unfortunately, but understandably, to avoid prison, Fincher signed the deal on May 17th and now has refused to speak to anyone about it. None of the ATF agents or attorneys involved are talking either, saying litigation is still pending. No one has answered any questions on how a FFL was charged with operating without an FFL. We still have no details, no evidence, and have no idea why the ATF chose to go after a guy like Fincher, while Dettelbach gets up at the mic during hearings and claims the ATF only goes after the worst of the worst, the gangbangers and trigger pullers, he said. But instead what we see is his agency going after airport executives and ministers with no criminal history. One of those men is now dead, and the other is now a convicted felon, which I'm sure will cost him his other 2 jobs. All right, folks, that is it for this sad and unfortunate update. I mean, I'm not going to blame the guy for taking a plea deal, but he was between a rock and a hard place, and he did not have very many options here. But it's amazing. It really is amazing to me what a case of bad handwriting can apparently turn into. Very curious. Anyways, you folks know the drill for all of the algorithm things. Please like, share, and subscribe if you are new here. Ring that notification bell. Drop a comment down below. And as always, thanks for tuning in, guys, and happy shooting.